Hello, everyone, and welcome to our presentation today on human trafficking in service industry work. We're so thankful that you've joined. My name is Ricky Barton, and I am a Stand Against Trafficking Coalition member. I will be your host throughout the morning together as we go through some really important information. I'm going to cover a few introductory things up front and then let you see some presentations that several different coalition members have spent their time putting together to educate you on trafficking in specific service industry, different workplaces, and then we'll have some Q&A time at the end. So please do jot down any questions that you have and feel free to utilize the chat feature to ask questions as we go along so that we can keep track of those along the way. So Stand Against Trafficking is a coalition here in Springfield, Missouri that exists to mobilize the community to end human trafficking in the Ozarks. That is the mission statement of the organization. We do that through raising awareness in the general community about domestic human trafficking in Southwest Missouri specifically. We provide education to key community leaders such as law enforcement, attorneys, medical staff, mental health providers, educators, government officials, faith-based organizations, community groups, etc., and on what defines human trafficking and the local prevalence of the issue and how to identify and assist victims and survivors of human trafficking. We emphasize the prevention of human trafficking by identifying risk factors and identifying vulnerable individuals and then educating those individuals and groups on strengthening the protective factors to reduce those risk factors. We also promote community collaboration around the topic of human trafficking, including sharing information, providing training, identifying and assisting victims of human trafficking. And we advocate for and support survivors through different agencies that are represented on the coalition. We connect those victims to those agencies and resources to help meet their need. We've existed since about 2012, and so we have some longstanding 9 years of existence here in the community, and we are glad to be a part of it and provide trainings just like this one. You can always request a training by going to our website if that's something that interests you. So what is human trafficking? It's modern day slavery, involves the use of force, fraud, or coercion to obtain labor or commercial sex, and can also be, the labor trafficking aspect as well. Millions of Americans, men, women, and children are trafficked. The estimate is about 25 million a year, but those numbers are very difficult to really, truly get in an accurate form because much of it goes unreported. And it is happening here in the United States in urban, suburban, and rural areas. It's broken down into three main sections. Sex trafficking, which involves victims being manipulated or forced to engage in sex acts for someone else's commercial gain. And under that, anyone under the age of 18 that's engaging in commercial sex is considered to be a victim of human trafficking because they cannot, by the legal definition, be forced, defrauded, or coerced into sex trafficking because they are a minor. Forced labor involves being compelled to work for little or no pay, and so we'll be talking about some of those situations today. And domestic servitude, which looks like being forced to work in isolation in people's homes as nannies or housekeepers, and again, that will come up later on today. So the key components are that it's by force, fraud, or coercion, and except in the case of minors. There are a couple myths and misconceptions I wanted to start with today. One of the myths is that the victim knew what they were getting into, that they committed unlawful acts, that they were paid for their services, that they had freedom of movement, there were opportunities to escape, but they didn't, and that all of them are women. That simply is not the case. The majority of them are women, but women or girls, but that's not the case. This does impact men as well. And so these myths, along with the ones listed here on this slide, that older men who prey on young girls, that they were kidnapped, that they, target victims they don't know, that they can be trafficked when they're married or related, or they don't go to school. All of these are, in fact, myths and misconceptions. And so a lot of the role of Stand Against Trafficking is to attempt to debunk those myths and to attempt to make sure that we are educating the community on the realities of trafficking and what's truly happening there, so that these myths and misconceptions can be responded to and we can identify victims better. There are several factors that put a person at higher risk of trafficking. they're called risk factors. It's important to note these do not cause trafficking, and the presence of a single risk factor does not mean that it's a trafficking situation, but it does put the individual at higher risk of being trafficked. And you can see these here on your screen. I won't go through all of them, but the idea is that these put a person at higher risk. And you'll notice all of these factors have in common the idea of vulnerability. The person is more vulnerable in these situations or having had these experiences. And so we want to be aware of these risk factors so that we can identify those who are potentially at higher risk and hopefully get them, intervene and get them the help that they need before the situation progresses. One last thing I wanted to cover before we get into the specific service sectors, that is that victims can be kind of difficult to identify because they may not know that they are a victim. And some of those reasons include that they may have fear of what is to come. If they were to identify or tell someone that they're a victim of trafficking, they may have trauma bonded to their trafficker or pimp. And that just looks like that they've developed a relationship and a connection that is maybe not understood by many, but that they have, through their trauma, actually bonded themselves and will defend and support the trafficker because of that bond. The trafficker may have made violent threats towards those they know and care about, so the person may fear retaliation in that way if they come forward. They may not just simply see themselves as victims. They may think that they made choices in life that led them to this circumstance, and so they don't see themselves as a victim. They may fear the legal consequences, especially when it comes to something like prostitution. You know, they may fear getting in trouble legally because of that, and so they may not want to come forward. There may also have been a distrust of law enforcement that has been instilled in them through their trafficker, and that may make them fearful of contacting the police. We will talk at the end of this video about why it's so important to call 911 and get involved, and in that way by calling them and getting law enforcement involved in the situation. So we'll cover that, but it is important to know that they may have distrust of law enforcement. And then of course this person may have been treated as a criminal and not a victim. So having said that, what we're going to do is we're going to have some videos that I will show you, a series of videos that will talk about very specific sectors, five specific sectors in kind of how trafficking is involved in those, and how someone who works in that industry may notice the signs and symptoms of a trafficking situation and what to do about that. So we'll watch this video in sequence of all the different presentations put together by our coalition members. We want to thank those who spent time putting those together, and they'll be available here for some questions afterwards. So make sure that you are able to sort of I jot down some questions that you may have in the process. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and show this. And if you have any issues with audio, just let me know in the chat, but this should be a smooth transition, we hope. Thanks. I will come back at the end of the video.
Hi, this presentation is going to be on human trafficking in hospitality for labor and sex trafficking. Traffickers often take advantage of the privacy and anonymity offered by the hospitality industry. They can operate discreetly because staff and guests may not know the signs of human trafficking. Hotels and motels are also major locations where traffickers force sex trafficking victims to provide commercial sex to paying customers. Victims may be forced to stay at a hotel or motel where customers come to them, or they are required to go to rooms rented out by the customers. There may also be employees who are victims of forced labor. If a third party applied for a position on behalf of an individual, or if employees are not receiving their own paychecks, these could be signs of human trafficking. Hotel and motel employees are often in the best position to see potential signs of human trafficking, especially since your duties give you access to different areas of properties. You may also have direct or indirect contact with both traffickers and the victims. Also, it's important to keep in mind that this can happen in high-end and low-end establishments. You could also watch out for these signs and indicators as a patron of these establishments. Here are some general signs of trafficking in hospitality settings. Individuals may show signs of fear, anxiety, tension, submission, and/or nervousness. Individuals may show signs of physical abuse, restraint, and/or confinement. Individuals may exhibit evidence of verbal threats, emotional abuse, and/or being treated in a demeaning way. Individuals may show signs of malnourishment, poor hygiene, fatigue, sleep deprivation, untreated illness, injuries, and/or unusual behavior. Individuals lack freedom of movement or are constantly monitored. Individuals may avoid eye contact and interaction with others. Individuals may have no control over possessions of money or their ID. Individuals may dress inappropriately for their age or have lower quality clothing compared to other people in their party. Individuals may have few or no personal items, such as bringing no purses or having other bags with them. Individuals may appear to be with a significantly older boyfriend and or in the company of older males. A group of girls may appear to be traveling with an older female or older male. A group of males or females with identical tattoos in similar locations. This may indicate branding by a trafficker. Here are some specific signs of human trafficking for housekeeping, maintenance, and room service staff in motel hotels. They may have a do not disturb sign used constantly, refusal of cleaning services for multiple days, excessive amounts of cash in a room, smell of bodily fluids and musk. There may be presence of multiple computers, cell phones, credit card swipes, and other technology. The same person may be reserving multiple rooms. These individuals may be leaving their room infrequently, not at all, or at odd hours. Children's items or clothing may be present, but no child registered with the room. And individuals wording in hallways or appearing to monitor the area. There may be excessive amounts of alcohol or illegal drugs in the room. Evidence of pornography. Minors may be left in the room for long periods of time. Maybe excessive number of people staying in a room. Extended stays with few or no personal possessions. Provocative clothing and shoes. Constant flow of men into a room at all hours. There may be excessive amounts of sex paraphernalia in rooms. That may be condoms, lubricant, lotion, and etc. These rooms may be stocked with merchandise, luggage, mail packages, purses, wallets with different names. These are specific signs of human trafficking for the concierge, bellman, front desk, security, and valet staff at motel hotels. Patrons checking into a room appear distressed or injured. The same person reserving multiple rooms. These rooms may be paid with cash or preloaded credit card. Excessive use of hotel computers for adult-oriented or sexually explicit websites. Patrons may not be forthcoming about full names, their home address, or vehicle information when registering. Minor may be taking on adult roles or behaving older than their actual age. This could be paying bills or requesting services. Patrons appears with a minor that he or she did not come with originally. There may be rentals of pornography when children are staying in the room, and individuals dropped off at hotel or visit repeatedly over a period of time. Minor with a patron late at night or during school hours that is not related to a vacation. Individuals checking into a room have no identification. The room is rented hourly, less than a day, or for a long-term stay that does not appear normal. Patrons request information or access to adult services or sex industry. The room may be rented, has fewer beds than patrons. individuals selling items to or begging from patrons or staff, and also a car in a parking lot regularly parked backwards. This is so the license plate is not visible. And here are some signs of human trafficking for staff at restaurants and bars. Patrons may be entertaining a minor at the bar or restaurant that he or she did not come in with originally. Patron claims to be an adult, although their appearance suggests he or she is a minor. Individuals loitering or soliciting male patrons. Individuals waiting at a table or bar picked up by a male who may be a trafficker or a customer. Individuals frequenting the establishment and leaving with different patrons. Individuals asking staff or patrons for food or money. So what should you do if you see any signs or indicators of trafficking? First, do not attempt to intervene or confront a suspected trafficker or victim. You can call 911 for emergency situations, follow your company's protocol, and or call the trafficking hotline number, 1-888-373-7888. You can also call 1-866-DHS-2-ICE to report suspicious criminal activity to federal law enforcement. Remember, when reporting, you can include as many details as possible. These may be a description of the potentially involved vehicles. There could be company logos on the vehicle, a license plate number, or the vehicle description. Physical description of suspected trafficker and or individual. This could be their height, weight, clothes, presence of tattoos, and unique physical characteristics. Thank you.
Hi, so today I'm going to be talking to you about human trafficking in construction and landscaping. So there are numerous ways that someone might become a labor trafficking victim. Some of them are migrant workers that come to the US on visas and are charged really exorbitant illegal visa fees. This ensures that the workers start out in debt and feel that they owe their trafficker. When the workers complain about all the abuse they're already receiving, they're threatened with deportation and abused even more, which traps them in a cycle of debt bondage. A lot of problems arise because since they're in that containment with their trafficker, a lot of times their visas expire, which makes them even more scared of like trying to find help, and the government basically not helping them because they're illegal. Another way is it's really important for us to acknowledge that US citizens can be victims as well. It's not just people from other countries. Youth that are isolated or financially desperate are promised high pay, but then they have really long work hours with little freedom and severe work conditions. We also have mentally delayed adults that their family believes the trafficker is caring for and nurturing them, but they actually might be being victimized. Some populations at risk, so people in the US on work visas or illegally, impoverished or homeless individuals from areas of conflict or instability, and people in need of social safety nets. So low-wage jobs in construction and landscaping can sometimes be dominated by Spanish-speaking individuals with immigration issues and lack of knowledge regarding US regulatory controls. So a lot of times they face insufficient breaks, lack of water and toilet facilities, insufficient safety equipment, and the lack of insurance coverage. In construction particularly, it's really, really easy for the traffickers to keep their victims isolated, which significantly lowers their chance of gaining their freedom. help is most often found by regulators and insurance investigators, union compliance investigators, and wage claims from workers with enough freedom to seek help. In landscaping, the most commonly referenced type of labor trafficking involves H-2B visa holders. H-2B visas are temporary work visas that the United States gives employers to hand out when they can't find US citizens to fill those jobs. Since H-2B visa holders do not receive federal funding for any legal services, it makes it especially hard for landscaping trafficking victims to get the help that they need. So some potential trafficker signs. So the individuals are usually private or part of a small group. Sometimes they're the owner or the employer of a business, but more often they're a supervisor, a foreman, human resources officer, employer protection union delegate, another worker, or a member of the employer's family. So some potential victim indicators: if they're accompanied by a controlling person and they're not really allowed to speak for themselves or continuously looking to that person for permission to speak, if they have a complete lack of control over their personal schedule, don't have access to money, their ID, or any travel documents, if they're transported to or from work, or that they live and work in the same place. And then we also have debt owed to an employer or crew leader and an inability to leave the job. And then we also have bruises, depression, fear, or overly submissive. So some areas for improvement in regulations. As I mentioned before, H-2B visa holders are the temporary work visas that the US gives to companies and employers. The difference between H-2A and H-2B. H-2A is for agriculture-related jobs, so farming, caring for livestock, things like that, whereas H-2B has landscaping, construction, other service jobs. It's more of a broad umbrella. But the important thing to take from this is they're not portable. So workers are not able to apply for a job, get into that position, and then they start experiencing abuse and want to leave. They're kind of stuck because it's not a portable thing you can just take. It's tied to your job and your employer. So if we were to allow them to be portable so they could escape abusive situations, that would help greatly reduce incidences of human trafficking. So what should you do? It's really important that you don't intervene or confront a suspected trafficker or a victim. You never know how someone is going to react, and one or more of you could get seriously hurt. If it's an emergency situation, make sure you call 911, follow any company protocols, and make sure you please call the trafficking hotline number at 1-888-373-7888, and make sure you include as many details as possible, like the description of potentially involved vehicles, such as company logo, license plate, truck description, any physical description of the trafficker or the individual you believe to be being trafficked, like height, weight, clothes, any presence of tattoos, or any other unique physical characteristics. That would really help get them the help that they need. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Ricky Barton, and I'm going to talk to you about trafficking in transportation settings. Traffickers use all sorts of different methods of transportation to transport victims. So this could be trains, buses, planes, trucks, and even rideshare situations. Transportation industry workers are the eyes and ears on all of the variety of settings that they may encounter individuals to spot trafficking and do something about it. Now, it's important to note that there's a difference between smuggling and trafficking, and smuggling involves movement of persons across borders between countries, whereas trafficking of persons involves labor or sex trafficking. It does not always include the movement of an individual, but it can, and so it's important to know the different ways that this can look in those settings. I'll cover a few general signs of trafficking in transportation settings and then get into the specifics of different industries. So a person might appear fearful. They might look anxious or have tension, be submissive or nervous around the person that they're with or them interacting with you. They may also show signs of physical abuse, restraint, or confinement, and signs of emotional abuse or being treated in a demeaning way, and may appear to be under the control of another person. They may appear malnourished and have poor hygiene. However, they also could look very well fed and very well kept, including makeup and well-dressed clothes. They could look very fatigued or sleep deprived and have injuries. An individual may avoid eye contact and interaction with anyone, including you, and have no control over money or ID and have very few personal items like luggage. Now, it's important when we're talking about signs of trafficking in the transportation industry that we keep in mind that an individual indicator or sign alone may not necessarily mean that a person's being trafficked. So when deciding whether or not to take action, you should consider the totality of the circumstances and making sure that there are several things that are presenting itself as concerning. No one individual thing means that trafficking is occurring. As far as trafficking in trucking situations, trafficking occurs at commercial truck stops, at state rest areas, and welcome centers. So you may see an individual moving from truck to truck, lacking the freedom of movement or the signs of being monitored. For example, they may be consistently looking back to a certain vehicle or a certain person or checking in with them. They might appear to be with a significantly older boyfriend or in the company of older men. And you may see a group of girls or boys who are traveling or stopping at rest stops with older male and female individuals. Within the aviation industry, we see some trafficking happening on airplanes and in airports. And so what an individual in the aviation industry might see, in addition to those previous signs, is difficulty communicating what their travel plans are. If there's questions asked about vacation or business travel, they may not be able to articulate that very well and say where they're going. In addition, they may have a person with them who's restricting their movement and their social interaction. You may also observe what looks like a very non-genuine relationship between a parent and a parent or guardian and a child. Just something that seems off about that relationship, and that could indicate that there might be trafficking happening. In railroad settings, rail police, conductors, ticket counter staff, and others in the railway system can also see trafficking happening. In fact, traffickers are very likely to use railroads because identification from passengers is not required when traveling or purchasing a ticket. So that allows them to be anonymous in, more so than air travel. So you may again see this difficulty in communicating logical travel plans, having restriction of movement or social interaction, and a non-genuine relationship between an adult and a child. In terms of ride shares, things like Uber, Lyft, taxis, and things along those lines, they can see them being transported potentially between clubs or moved to a new location. So signs you might see include not knowing what town or city they're in, any kind of controlling behaviors or gestures or looks that might provoke fear in one of the individuals in the car, or someone being physically put into a car and then you're expected to drive off with them. The person may seem anxious about departing from or arriving at a location, depending on what they came from or what they're going into. So you may see some anxiousness about that. And then children or youth being dropped off at unsafe locations, and individuals using multiple phones or having a lot of cash. Signs you might hear would be requesting drop-off at locations that are hidden or have hidden or discreet entrances. If the person is insisting on a cash payment or a prepaid card cash situation, most of the rideshare services utilize a credit card payment. So if they are indicating that they want to use cash, that might be a sign of trafficking. If you overhear someone being coached on how to lie about their age or their identity or location or the situation that they're in, that is an indicator of trafficking happening. And if you as a driver are having a discussion and maybe the person talks about job opportunities, that they're going to meet someone online about launching a career or a modeling job or earning money to get out of a situation, these could be indicators that they're going to meet someone who potentially could be trafficking them. In the event you run into these situations, it's important that you not intervene or confront a suspected trafficker or victim that not only puts you in danger, but also could put the victim at higher level of danger, and you know, they could be taken away from the situation, never to be seen again. So it's important to not intervene. If there is an emergency situation, certainly call 911 and refer to your company's protocol for these situations. But it's also important in non-emergency situations and in emergency situations after you've called 911 to call the trafficking hotline number at 1-888-3737-888 and talk to someone on the phone about what you're seeing. This will not only help us to track what's going on and track a case, but also get an indicator of how prevalent trafficking is in our state. So when you report, include as many details as possible, including a description of, you know, any potential vehicles that are involved or the bus or any kind of information that you've got on the situation, as well as much information on the persons that you're calling about, whether that be the trafficker or the victim. So their height, their weight, their clothes, any tattoos you might see, or any unique physical characteristics that could help them identify the person. Overall, what you can do is know the signs of trafficking, develop a plan of response or reporting. If you are in a position where you can offer employee training, please do so, and distribute fact sheets that can be found at the Blue Campaign with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security or others that you find online from reputable sources. And this will help us to address the issue of trafficking in our community. Thank you so much for watching this today.
Well, hi everyone. Thank you very much for this opportunity. My name is Dawn Day. I am a registered nurse that works in the emergency room, and I also am a certified SAE nurse, and I'm the sexual assault program coordinator at Mercy Hospital in Springfield. So today I will be discussing trafficking within in-home services. This concept is that they really can be hidden within plain sight, and who is this targeted towards? Think of anybody that provides in-home services: electricians, HVAC, internet cable, security systems, repairmen, lawn care installers, plumbers, and that list can go on and on. Any service industry that would be around or in someone's home is someone that can experience what I'm about to talk about, and the concept that we need to be aware of victims that we could be seeing that are really hidden within plain sight. So the type of trafficking that we would see in a home, when we say the word trafficking, there's you could have labor trafficking and sex trafficking, and that comes in many different forms of violence towards individuals. But domestic servitude is someone that is essentially held captive, and they're forced to work within the home under horrific conditions. So they could be nannies or maids, or anybody that works in the home, and they really are in servitude to that house and they really cannot escape. You might see sex trafficking or a form of commercial sex industry. Commercial sex industry is prostitution, porn, any type of performance aspect of sexual exploitation. And sex trafficking is a form of commercial sex industry, so they kind of go hand in hand on what that might look like. And then we have to be worried about familial trafficking, and that's what it sounds like. It's individuals who traffic out their own family members. So that could be young adults in the family, or that could be children that are within the home that are being trafficked. So some statistics that support the concept of what I'm about to talk about. Domestic work is the #1 venue for labor trafficking. These are all based on hotline calls into the Polaris Project. So domestic servitude, domestic work within the home is astronomically a huge number of victims within labor trafficking that this is happening to. 90% of these victims reported that they had a recent migration or relocation. So that's important to know because people that are new to the area or even new to this country. So you may be you may be witnessing illegal immigrants or individuals that do not know much about the community or just the surroundings that they're in, because that puts them at a huge high risk factor for being pulled into labor trafficking. The fact that they're new to the area and don't know a lot, or like I said, new to this country. So familial is the second most common recruitment tactic for sex trafficking. So it's very high up there. It's occurring in our communities. It's something that you might see. And unstable housing for runaways is the second highest risk factor for labor and sex trafficking. So that's important because if you have an unstable house or you have someone that's a runaway, the concept about that is they don't have a place to stay. They have unstable housing, they don't have a place to live, they're running away from the place they live. So the big take home factor with this is they're looking for a place to stay. So they're going to be entering these homes and staying under the roofs of these traffickers, and that unstable housing and runaways is the second highest risk factor for trafficking to occur. So we need to know that's how they're getting into these homes, and you guys might be seeing them there. So just when you walk up to the house or the building from the outside, what might you see? Multiple cars might be present in an area that kind of come and go. There's going to be very likely an unusually high number of people coming in and out of the house at all times of night. And then if you see any suspicious window coverings in certain parts of the house, so some windows are exposed and then other areas of the home, you have them blatantly covered up, that's something suspicious that you need to keep your eye out for. And then one of the types of things you might see, so domestic servitude. Like I said, these individuals are hidden in plain sight. They're forced to work in homes. They can be nannies, maids, domestic help, but they're often working under very harsh conditions, very long hours, not being paid, being forced to do harsh work, live in harsh conditions, and often the traffickers will take away their identification papers or travel papers. So people that came in from another country will take away their identity essentially, so that it will limit their freedom from being able to get away and out of that situation. But what might you see when in homes? These photos are very. This, of course, these are the worst of the worst situations, the photos that I have on here. But this just kind of gives you an idea and a visual of things you kind of need to look out for. So locks on interior doors or windows that permit people from being able to exit rooms or exit to get to the outside. Numerous beds in the house, a lot of them will be located on floors. Drugs or sex paraphernalia seen across the home. Multiple phones. You might see multiple cell phones in use across the house. Expensive items, so expensive jewelry, expensive purses, anything of high cash value that's located around the house that seems especially out of place for that living situation, or security devices. So anything that you have a security device that you notice or that you're installing that might look like they're monitoring the concept of someone exiting a room, going into a room, or even exiting the house out of a normal exit. That's a suspicious concept that you might see. So who might you encounter? Who are the people you might see, or who might you run across when in the home? So it's very suspicious if you come across school-age children that are not in school on a school day, and there's no evidence of appearing that they are homeschooled at all. Or perhaps a family member that appears to be a family member, but they're dressed extremely different than the rest of the family. So the types of clothes that they're wearing look very different than others in their family, or they have significant lower hygiene comparative to others, that's something to be cautious about. You might have multiple multiple women living with belongings with a male nearby. So if you see multiple women or multiple children kind of living together, and there's a male nearby that kind of oversees that concept, that's something to be concerned about. For individuals who are inadequately dressed for the work situation. So whether they're inadequately dressed for the season, if they're wearing not very many clothes and it's extremely cold outside, or if they're there to, clean the house and they're dressed inappropriately for that, that's something that might draw your attention to that as well. What might be experience? What's like conversations you have or interactions you might have? So something you personally experienced with being in that home. So when you come across individuals in the home that are submissive or fearful, avoid eye contact or have very scripted responses. Someone in the home might restrict them completely from speaking at all, or control their actions, control their responses. If you are actually physically restricted from going in a certain area in the home, if you're there to work in the home, to whatever situation it might be, and they specifically say that do not go in this area, that's questionable on why you might be restricted from a certain area of the home. If the homeowner will follow you around, the individual will want to know where you're at, what you're doing, who you're talking to. So if they follow you around your actions, or are you being paid in cash? These individuals aren't going to want to give any type of information out there where they can be tracked. They want to hide their identity as much as possible. So being paid in cash is something that you need to be aware of that could happen. And ultimately, that's just kind of a screenshot of things to kind of put in the back of your mind, things you want to be aware of, and have a heightened awareness for when you're in these situations. But ultimately, those are just examples of what you might see. You may have every single one of those examples in a home, and it may not be trafficking, or you may have none of those examples at all, and it could be trafficking. There's no way to know for sure. If you're in a situation where you do know for sure, there's an emergency situation, and you know for sure that somebody is being harmed, and they need help immediately, call 911, please. Whatever you do, do not attempt to intervene in the situation. Do not confront the suspected trafficker or the victim. Please just notify authorities immediately if there's an at-risk situation, or you can confirm that it's a trafficking situation. However, if you suspect something and you just have this gut feeling, please report it to the National Trafficking Hotline. That's 1-888-3737-888. You can call the tip line. You can go online and report tips. But please, they will want to take as much descriptive information that you can provide. So any descriptive information, an address, the amount of people in the home, interactions that you had, physical surroundings, like any identification factors you might have, like company logos or license plates. But give descriptions as much as you can. If you have names, that's great. If not, what are their ages? What do they look like? How tall are they? How many are in there? Who seems to be the victim? Who seems to be the person controlling? The trafficking hotline will take any tips that you're able to get. So please, if you're anything that is a suspicion or that you're concerned about, please call it in. The number one call that we get to the human trafficking hotline is a tip. We will take tips turn into investigated cases. And the number one individual that calls into the hotline is a community member. We are all community members, and we need to do our part. We need to realize that it is happening here. These people are hiding in plain sight. And please, let's do everything we can to rid our community of this violent crime occurring here. Thank you very much for your time.
Hi, I'm Ricky Barton. I'm going to talk about human trafficking in tattoo parlors. Sometimes a trafficker will force a victim to get a tattoo in order to assert their dominance. Some traffickers use their own tattoo artists in private settings. However, if you are an owner or you're employed by a public tattoo store, you want to make sure that you're aware of signs of trafficking, so that if someone does come into your parlor, that you are very aware of those signs and you can help that victim. You may see other, tattooing, scarring, bruising that might flag you to the idea that this could be a trafficking situation. Much like how a farmer brands their cattle, trafficking victims can be coerced into getting tattoos so that it's indicated that they belong to their trafficker. And this is how you can indicate whether or not there might be something happening here and provide assistance to those victims. When it comes to the actual tattoos, many times the traffickers will use symbols of wealth in order to indicate that a victim's value is tied to the income that they can generate for their trafficker. You may also see them tattooing names on them, and that would indicate potential ownership of that individual by their trafficker. A lot of times these tattoos may contain profanity, and at times they can be found in visible areas like the arm, face, neck, or hand. However, they also could be done in discrete locations. As a person in the public, we may not see those discrete locations, but you as a tattoo artist would know that that tattoo is being put in a more hidden area, and that could be an indicator that trafficking is happening. The victims of trafficking in tattoo settings may indicate that they don't have identification with them or on them. They don't have possession of that. They may not know where they are in terms of what city they're in. You might also feel like you're getting a very scripted or canned conversation, so you may be asking them some questions and their responses just seem very limited. That may indicate that they've been coached on how to respond and what to say or not say. They also may seem scared and not make any eye contact with you. You want to look for bruising, cigarette burns, and other tattoos that might indicate abuse. And if there's someone out there who's maybe making the decisions for them, or if the person really seems fearful or timid or submissive, if it appears that another person might be controlling them or they're deferring their answers or responses to another individual, these could be signs of trafficking in tattoo settings. Tattoo artists are in a very unique position to see this person up close, in person, and in an extended period of time. So listen to their story, and if something doesn't add up, pay attention to that. If you do notice signs of trafficking, do not attempt to intervene or confront a suspected trafficker or victim. If it's an emergency situation, call 911, and of course follow your company's protocol on this. But it's also important, whether emergency or not, that you also call the human trafficking hotline number at 1-888-3737-888. You want to include as many details as possible. For example, what vehicle did they come in? If you know that information, what's a physical description of both the trafficker and the potential victim? What's their height, weight, clothes? What other tattoos were they getting, and any unique physical characteristics that they might have had? This will help not only the police, but also the hotline number be able to identify those cases. We hope this was helpful in finding out whether or not there's trafficking happening in tattoo parlors, and trust your gut. And if you think that there may be something going on, please make the phone call.
Good morning. My name is Chris Inman. I am the director of Springfield Greene County 911. I've been with the organization now, this will be my 27th year. I want to talk to you a little bit about 911's role in what we think in terms of suspicious calls. The types of calls that we're talking about today would fall under that categorization of suspicious calls. So we're going to talk just a little bit about the 911 role in this type of call and what we would like for you to do with regard to contacting us when you see something that just doesn't seem to add up. So let's just jump right into it. It's very important when you call 911 that you are prepared to report to us what you see. A lot of times when you call 911, you aren't sure what it is that you are seeing. But it's important that when you see something suspicious, something that doesn't seem right, something out of the ordinary, that is by and large how we end up sending police officers to calls like we're talking about today. But we are entirely dependent, as is law enforcement, on citizens and the eyes of citizens and what they see. So when you see something, or when people see something that does not add up, something that would suggest to you that there's something going on that shouldn't be, we implore you to please call 911. And one of the things I'm going to talk a little bit about this morning here is this idea that so many of us have that we shouldn't call 911. I think the first instinct that people have with regard to 911 is, no, I don't want to bother them. I better not call them unless I know it's an emergency. And we're trying to kind of dispel that line of thinking and encourage people, when you see something, call us. If it doesn't add up, call us. We are in the business of better safe than sorry. And that certainly works for what we're talking about this morning. So please, again, if you see something that doesn't seem right, call 911. That's what we're here for. Now, let's talk a little bit about what happens when you call 911. Most people don't have a lot of experience doing that. When you call 911, please note that our 911 telecommunicators are trained to handle the call, no matter what that call is. And believe me, as you can imagine, we get calls of every stripe and some that you can't probably imagine. So allow our telecommunicator to take control. What they're going to do when you call in is go after some very specific information. They're going to do it in a very specific order. I think most of the time when folks call 911, the instinct is to flood our folks with the information that you have. That's a normal instinct that you have. But we're going to ask folks, and we continue to ask folks, when you call 911, try to take a breath, let our telecommunicators get into the driver's seat and take control. They are trained to ask the types of information that they need quickly and efficiently so they can get that call entered for service and we can get someone out to the scene. So remember that the telecommunicator is in control when you call. Let them take that control, and they'll start asking you the kinds of questions they need to ask to get the definitive information needed to make sure that our responders get out there with the information that they need. Some of that information is going to include things like your location. Our call takers are trained to immediately find out where you are and what number you're calling from. So they're probably going to, very first thing they're going to do is, hey, what is your address, or what is the address of this occurrence? You don't know the address? What are the cross streets? They're going to try to figure out a way to log that at a place that we can actually send someone. And again, they're going to ask for your callback number right off the bat. The reason for that, obviously, if we get disconnected, we're going to want to call you back. So be prepared for that. We ask people in the public often, when you call 911, just know that there are two things we have to have right off the bat. We've got to know where you are or where this incident is, and we have to know the number you're calling from. At that point, we're going to get into the description. So be prepared. We ask people to be prepared with a very basic description and let our folks lead you down that path. What color is his shirt? Okay, did he have long or short pants? What color were they? Is he heavy set? Is he thin? Is he black, white, Asian, or Hispanic? That sort of thing. So again, our 911 telecommunicators are trained to take you down that road in the order that they need to get that very brief description. Also know about 911 that when you call us, as we are asking these questions, we are entering this information into our computer-aided dispatch system in real time. So that information is being sent to the dispatcher as we are talking to you. A lot of times people don't realize that, and frankly, why would you? But it is happening. A lot of times, for example, when we take medical calls and we're asking medical questions, typically we don't do that. We transfer medical calls to the local ambulance companies. It's a story for another PowerPoint. But in any event, that call is already entered and folks are already on the way while we're talking to you. So our folks are trained to multitask. So don't think time is being wasted when we're asking you questions, because these questions are going into an already existing call, and the likelihood that somebody is already on the way is quite high. Moving on, I want to really get through the idea that you can call 911 without fear. And I talked a little bit about this as we got started here today. People tend to not want to call 911 because they don't think they should. We have gotten calls on non-emergency lines of people telling us, sorry to bother you, I know you're busy and you can put me on hold if you need to, but my husband isn't free. It's very important that people understand that we are here to send police, fire, or EMS. And if you believe that you may need one of those services, call us. You don't have to be certain about that. You might think you might possibly need police, or perhaps you see what you think could be a trafficking situation. You're not sure, you've never seen one before, but boy, it sure doesn't seem right. Call us. Call us without fear. People often tell me, I don't want to call people, or I don't want to call 911 because I don't want to get in trouble if it doesn't turn out to be real. That's not going to happen. The only way you're ever going to get in trouble for calling 911 is if you call us with deliberately false information, or you're calling us over and over harassing 911. You know, aside from that, there is no concern. Even if what you call us turns out to not at all be what you thought it was, that's okay. So I think my primary message this morning is call 911 without fear. There's no need to fear. And we're not too busy. We're trained to handle anything that's thrown at us. We've answered thousands and thousands of calls during ice storms and other situations in a very short period of time, and we're equipped for that. So we can handle your call. Please don't be afraid to call us. If you are in doubt, call us. I think that what I saw was suspicious. Call us. You know, I'm not positive that those two didn't know each other, but it seemed odd. Please call 911. If that is the message that you leave with today about 911, then my message or my duty is complete. Now, the calls that we're talking about today are going to fall under a couple of categories. So we call these check a person and check the well-being. We don't have a specific trafficking call type here, but what we do have for calls like this, in which people aren't necessarily sure what's going on or they think they know what's going on, check a person or check the well-being. We literally get thousands of check a person and check the well-being calls every single year. And if you think about it, it makes sense, because a lot of times when people call into 911, they aren't sure what they're seeing. They just know it seems odd. They just know someone might need to be checked on. And that's where these two call types fall in for us. So when you call with the trafficking type call, if you think that that's what you're seeing, it is in all likelihood going to be entered as one of these two call types. What that means is it affects the priority of the call, and that's how we determine how quickly an officer is going to be able to respond. A lot of times we'll have 6 to 7 beat officers working at a time and lots of calls coming in. So there's not any possible way to send those officers immediately on every single call like you see on TV. But using our priority system, it makes it a lot easier to get those calls out quickly. Certainly if someone's life is being threatened or their well-being is being threatened, we're going to be able to get officers out much more quickly. And again, that talks about priority of response, and that's these priorities are assigned call types. Our dispatchers and call takers can tweak those priorities as needed. For example, your typical check a person call is what we call a priority 3. But if there is an extenuating circumstance in that call, it looks like someone is being hurt, we may change the call type, bump up the priority, so you get the idea there. But again, none of these check a person or check the well-being calls that we get thousands of every year, very few of them I should say, are definitive. Very few callers are calling us and saying, this is exactly what's happening. This is a trafficking situation. I know that it is. Much more often when we get calls of this nature, callers aren't sure what it is, and that's okay. It's okay to not be sure. I want to let you know as we kind of wrap up here that 911 telecommunicators are trained and ready to take your call. Very, very few 911 calls are extremely definitive. Sure, we get calls of, someone is having a heart attack, someone has been shot, someone isn't breathing. Obviously, those types of calls tend to be very definitive. The person calling knows exactly what's going on. But the great majority of calls to 911 don't know what's going on. And that's okay. There continues to be, I think, a disconnect nationwide with the idea that it's okay to call 911 if you're not sure what you see. But I want to leave you today with the understanding that it is absolutely okay to call. We count on you to call. Now, do we occasionally get the call on 911 asking us what channel the Kansas City Chiefs are playing on? We do. That is not a proper use of 911. But a proper use of 911 is you seeing something that doesn't square with you, and you call us because of it. So as I wrap up here, I want to, first of all, thank you for taking the time to listen to me about 911. And I want to encourage you once again to please keep your eyes peeled. Let us know what you see. Better to be safe than sorry. Let's leave here today from our conversation with that in mind. And I thank you very much for your attention this morning.
Okay, so you've just watched the different videos that we have available. Each of those are available as separate entities in and of themselves. So if you know of someone who works in any of those fields and you would like to send them that video so that they can watch that portion, and perhaps even invite Stand Against Trafficking to do a presentation, we would be thrilled by that. So we just welcome that. Each of those, like I said, are available. They're about 8 to 12 minutes long each. And so please let us know. I have the last slide has Stand Against Trafficking's contact information on it. So you will be able to see that as soon as we're finishing up here. The other thing I'm excited to announce is Stand Against Trafficking has been working on a video, a public service announcement video that I'm going to show you, and it's going to be airing all over the place, as many places as we can get it to go. And it is really just a great snapshot of the different ways that trafficking can show up. And so I'm excited to show this to you right now.
When you work in the service industry, you see a lot of homes, meet a lot of people, even pets. You always need to be on the lookout for better ways to safeguard the people you serve. You pay attention to detail and work hard every day so you don't miss a thing.
Like you just said.
Workers in people's homes are a critical part of identifying potential cases of human trafficking. When you know what to look for, you can play a part in ending human trafficking. As service workers, you are on the front lines, in homes and neighborhoods. You play an important role in the detection of human trafficking. Now that you know a few of the signs of what to look for, if you identify someone you think may need help, please contact the National Human Trafficking Hotline at 888-373-7888. This hotline is available from anywhere in the country, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and all calls are confidential. If you spot immediate danger, please dial 911. Thank you for your help in keeping our communities safe.
All right, so like I said, we are very excited to launch that video. I hope that it was impactful on you and that this presentation has just been helpful for you to become more aware of some of the signs to look for and how to intervene. If you do have any questions, please go ahead and feel free to use the chat. We would love to. I've got the different presenters available to answer any questions that you might have specific to their industry sector that they talked about. I'm not seeing any questions come through in the chat, but if you do end up having any, we can also always take some later offline through email. And of course, like I've said before, there is always the we can get you those individual videos. So the individual videos will be available. If you email us, I'll put our email up on the screen. Paige, thanks for asking that. We will get those to you and help to share those in a speedy fashion. So just send us an email and request which ones you would like, and we can get that together for you. Just looking at the different questions that are coming in here. 1 second. Yes, this presentation in its entirety has been recorded, and it will be available on our website. So that's standagainsttrafficking.org, and you can find under the events tab, you'll be able to find this recording. Just give us a little bit of time to put it up there, but this entire webinar will be available there as well. Are there any other questions that we can answer for you? In the meantime, I just want to draw your attention to the quote that's on the screen. This is just a very, very impactful quote, that you may choose to look the other way, but you can never again say that you did not know. And this was William Wilberforce was a large player, a big player in back in the slavery days of the United States and working to free African Americans from slavery. And so what a fitting quote, even for today, as we're talking about modern day slavery through labor and sex trafficking, that the more education we can get out there, the better. So truly, if you have a desire to have us come and present on our website, you can actually request a presentation, give us a little bit of information, and we'll get back with you and let you know when we can fulfill that and ask you just some details and make sure that that can happen. And of course, that's free of charge. This coalition just works to really educate the community. And so we are available to do that at standagainsttrafficking.org. Having said that, I'll go ahead and just click through the slides. This one is similar to the one that you've seen several times. And like I said, because they are individual videos, you saw several things presented, multiple times, but we wanted to make sure that we'd rather duplicate here than not have important information for the service sectors. So these are just some ways that you can get involved. Some extra things here that maybe you haven't thought of yet is you can join or create an organization about this. Stand Against Trafficking serves Southwest Missouri. And so we meet the first Monday of every month at 12 o'clock. We meet virtually as well as in person, but in person is limited at this time. And so you can join us on Zoom and be a part of our meeting. So that's the first Monday of every month at 12 o'clock. And I will, again, put up some information in just a second so that you can get the information. You can email us to get meeting details. You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We've got, our socials are out there and we post a lot of content there. And so you can also do that and just spread the word on what you've learned today. Share this video with others. I have our email up on the slide right now, as well as our website and then our Facebook page. And then we are also on Instagram, Stand Against Trafficking on Instagram and Twitter. So you can search for us, look for our logo, and you'll be able to find that. I don't see any other questions coming in at this time. So we will wrap up for the sake of time, but please feel free to reach out to us if you need anything moving forward. We will be happy to work with you or your organization to get some training done and continue this really important work. So thank you so much for joining us today and have a great one.